In this video, I will be discussing prompt 2 on lesson reflection. So after reading the article of reflective practices and a means to teacher development, I've concluded that reflection is a crucial part of my instructional practice as it allows me to analyze my teaching methods, student engagement, and overall lesson effectiveness. The article highlights that experience alone does not necessarily lead to learning. Deliberate reflection on experience is essential. I regularly take time to evaluate what worked well in my lessons and what needs improvement. Considering student responses and learning outcomes, this reflective practice helps me refine my teaching practices, adjust my approaches to better support diverse learners, and bridge the gap between theory and practice. By continuously reflecting on my instructional decisions, I can ensure that I am growing as an educator and providing meaningful learning experiences for my students. I utilize peer experts by engaging in collaborative discussions, seeking feedback, and observing my colleagues' teaching methods. The article highlights the importance of peer involvement in reflective practice as it encourages teachers to challenge their assumptions and develop new perspectives. Peer observations, discussions in professional learning communities, and feedback from mentor teachers allow me to see alternative strategies and refine my practice. By learning from experienced educators and sharing insights with my peers, I can enhance my teaching effectiveness and stay informed about best practices in education. Every Tuesday, my school, we have collaborative planning, which allows me to collaborate with my peers and my colleagues on what's going well in our classrooms, individual classrooms, and what we can improve on. My prior knowledge and experiences, both as a student and as a teacher, significantly shape my instructional decisions, and professional growth. The article discusses how teachers integrate knowledge gained during pre-service training with practical classroom experiences to make informed choices. My background in education and my previous experiences teaching various grade levels helped me anticipate student challenges and adapt my teaching accordingly. Additionally, my students' diverse experiences and learning styles provide continuous learning opportunities for me as I adjust my methods to meet their needs. By reflecting on past experiences and student interactions, I continually refine my approach to create a more inclusive and effective learning environment. I'm thinking back to a lesson that I previously taught around the September, October range. Um, it focused on arrays and equal groups to introduce multiplication as a part whole strategy, and the lesson aligned with PAR 3, helping students solve real-world problems involving multiplication and division within 100. The concept focus was understanding multiplication as repeated addition and division as equal sharing groups. The real-world connections that the lesson used a scenario where students planned seating arrangements for a class party, determining how many chairs were needed if tables had equal seats. The key strategies that I taught my students were to make arrays, which is just students arranging counters to represent multiplication facts in rows and columns. I taught them how to do equal groups, so they group objects to understand division and use number lines to skip count, which reinforce multiplication relationships. Student engagement, they use a lot of hands-on manipulatives, use whiteboards and small groups for problem solving and collaborative discussions with them doing small groups amongst each other. Their assessments were exit tickets with word problems to check conceptual understanding. A daily exit ticket with a word problem generator was what I used on a regular when we were doing this standard. And the lessons that were geared towards this to check for their understanding. So addressing all learners, I was moderately successful in meeting the needs of all my learners, but of course, there's always areas for improvement. So some successes were the students using hands-on manipulatives, counters to make arrays, which supported my visual learners. Group work and discussions help students verbalize their thinking, benefiting for my auditory learners. And then multiple representations, like I said, using arrays, our number lines, our drawings of equal groups allow students to choose their preferred method. Some challenges that I face are that some students struggle with transitioning from hands-on models to abstract equations. So we always start off with our hands-on model. I use the method, a CRA model, where it's concrete, representational, and abstract. First, we start with our concrete manipulatives, and then we move on to drawing that out on paper and then making it abstract. So some students have a hard time with that transition. For my higher level students, they quickly grasp the concept and needed extension activities fairly quickly. And then some struggling learners needed additional one-on-one or small group support to reinforce some of those concepts. To improve differentiation, I would integrate tiered problems, so varying complexity levels based on their levels, and technology-based support, so interactive games for reinforcement to keep up their engagement. What worked for that lesson, if we had real world context, so, seating arrangements, they are in a seating arrangement every day, so they're able to understand different types of seating arrangements there could be, which engaged students and made learning more meaningful to them. Concrete to abstract progression, like I stated, starting with manipulatives and before moving to equations, supported conceptual understanding for most students, but not all. And then collaborative problem solving allowed peer teaching and also reinforced learning. What didn't work was our time constraints. So some students needed more time with hands-on models before moving to written problems. Whole class instruction for word problems. Some students struggle with decoding word problems, suggesting they needed more small group support. And in small groups and in whole group, I like to use a 3-read strategy with my students. But some students just need that more of a small group setting rather than sitting trying to learn it within a class of 27. And then also lack of extension for my advanced learners. I wasn't prepared for them to grasp the concept so quickly. So I needed to gather more challenging tasks for them, introducing them to multi-step problems and student-created real-life scenarios. The current integration that I used at the time was math and literacy. So students read and solved word problems incorporating comprehension skills. And then students created visual representations of arrays using drawings and physical objects, which integrated the art of it. Some changes for better cross-concept integration. I would add in math and science. So connecting multiplication to real-world scientific data, such as counting animal populations and habitats using multiplication. I also would consider math and social studies with using historical or real life economic context. So calculating trade or goods in a marketplace, which is what I did for um, my reteach lesson. And then also I incorporated math and writing, which is having students write their own multiplication and division word problems and explain solutions in writing. So for my revised lesson, this is just a quick snippet of students' outcome or their work that they produced. I fast forwarded to a part where they're sharing out, a couple of them are sharing out the word problems that they created on their own and explaining how it can be solved. Let me make sure. Okay. Check off your word problem. You'll stand up, read your word problem where everybody can hear it, give us the equation, explain how you solved it, and then are your answer. Okay? All right, go ahead, Kyle. Just stand up right there.
Has 3 bags of apples. Each bag has 5 apples in the 3 bags. How many does she have in all? I choose 3 bags with 5 apples inside. And my equation was 3 times 5 and it equals 50.
All right, good. Anybody else like to share theirs? And I'll stop right there. For the sake of time, I have linked the entire lesson below this video. The problem means I've checked off your word problem. As I journaled and reflected on the lesson that I did, it was a mini lesson for the sake of time because we were on a time constraint. The lesson was engaging because students were able to connect math with real life experiences And many of them enjoyed creating their own word problem scenarios, and some even added extra details, creating multi-step scenarios, which I will highlight later on in the video. So some strengths were students easily related to real world context, and many used we call them keywords, such as each or equal groups or in all or in total, to be able to identify what operation their problem was. Some challenges were that some students struggled with wording their problems correctly. A few needed some scaffolding to differentiate between multiplication or division, along with some of them struggled with identifying between multiplication and addition. And a time, like I said, a time was a constraint where some students needed extra time to refine their writing. Here's some student work. These are more of the exemplar students that were able to create either a multiplication or a division word problem, and was able to show their work in whatever strategy they decided to use, and then had their answers. So one student in particular, there's two students that use equal groupings. One had a division word problem, one was a multiplication word problem, but they both showed equal groups. One explained his problem as repeated addition, and so did the other ones explain their problem as repeated addition. Reflecting on the lesson, the revised lesson was more engaging, like I said, because it integrated that writing concept where they were able to create their own word problems, rather than just solving ones that were pre-made. One of the biggest successes is anytime my students are able to create something and share it with each other, it makes them feel like they're teachers, which heightens the engagement because they like being able to play teacher from here and there. Some cultural diversity was moderately integrated, but it could have been improved. I could have encouraged students to create problems from more personal experiences, especially those that were struggling. So, for instance, they were shopping in the store with a family member, and they were buying like some fruits or goods. And I would like to increase representation by making sure the examples that I provide reflect more cultural variety in future lessons. The first lesson, some students were passive learners and follow along, but not deeply engaged. However, those same students with this revised lesson, the engagement increased significantly due to them being able to create in their own problems and tell their own story. For future classes, I might incorporate movement. So setting up a mock farmers market where students are physically moving items into equal groups and purchasing items and knowing how many items they want to purchase. Um, if there was changes in student engagement, more students actively participated, like I stated. Students took ownership of their work, and it also helped them have a deeper understanding. And as a result, student learning improved. In the original lesson, students solved problems correctly, but very passively. In the revised lesson, they had to create, analyze, and solve problems, which reinforced a deeper conceptual understanding of multiplication and or division. This lesson demonstrated that hands-on student-centered learning leads to deeper engagement and understanding. By allowing students to create their own word problems, they were more invested in the lesson and took ownership of their learning. The integration of writing strengthened both math communication skills and critical thinking as students had to carefully construct problems that made sense mathematically. A major highlight was the peer collaboration aspect. So after the video, I allowed them to collaborate with each other and help each other out. Students were excited to solve each other's problems, which led to natural discussion and self-correction. Several students identified errors in their initial problems and adjusted them after peers' feedback, reinforcing the importance of precision in mathematical language. However, I also noticed differences in student comfort levels with both math and writing. Math confident students quickly wrote problems, but struggled with proper sentence structure. Strong writers created detailed scenarios, but sometimes made mathematical errors. The biggest takeaway is from this lesson was learning becomes more meaningful when students see themselves in the material. Just comparing two students' work with a struggling student compared to an advanced gifted student. So my struggling student provided a sentence, they had trouble structuring their word problem. And so a support strategy I could use is providing a sentence starter template to help them structure their word problem correctly. Compared to my advanced gifted student, was able to form a multi-step problem, and that was a challenge that I gave him. And if I wanted to keep challenging him, I could challenge him to write a full page story incorporating multiple operations. Um, and then have students like him research real life market math. Reflecting on my graduate experience, throughout my graduate coursework, I have gained a deeper understanding of instructional strategies, student engagement, and culturally responsive teaching, all in which have shaped my thinking and teaching style. The courses I took have not only reinforced my best practices in math and literacy instruction, but also encouraged me to think critically about how I design inclusive, student-centered lessons that meet the needs of all learners. One of the most significant influences on my teaching has been the emphasis of student-centered learning. My coursework reinforced the importance of inquiry-based and constructivist learning, which led me to prioritize lessons where students create, explore, and engage actively rather than passively observe information. This mindset was evident in my math and writing integrated lesson that I showed before, where students design their own work problems instead of simply solving teacher-generated ones. Another key takeaway from my graduate experience was the importance of culturally responsive teaching. Courses on diversity in education helped me become more aware of the need of representation in my lessons and encouraged me to incorporate students' lived experiences into my instruction. Additionally, my coursework deepened my understanding of assessment and differentiation strategies, helping me become more intentional about scaffolding learning and struggling students while also challenging advanced learners. While my graduate courses provided strong foundation, there are areas where I could have benefited more targeted training. One challenge I still face is managing multi-level learners simultaneously. While I learned differentiation strategies, practical classroom management in differentiation setting could be more helpful. More real-world case studies and simulations on balancing independent work, small group instruction, and whole class discussions would have strengthened my ability to implement differentiation more effectively. Another area of growth is family and community engagement. While my courses covered cultural inclusive, I would have benefited from a stronger focus on practical strategies for engaging families and incorporating community resources into my lessons. But overall, my graduate experience has transformed me into a more reflective and adaptable educator. And I now approach lesson planning with intentionality, ensuring that instruction is engaging, inclusive, and meaningful for all of my students. While I have grown significantly, I recognize that teaching is an ongoing learning process, and I'm committed to continually refining my practice through professional development, collaboration, and self-reflection. And that is my reference from the article that I used to review reflection. Thank you.